everyone, this is Maria. Welcome back to my Earth Friendly Kitchen. Today we're going to be making something that is super reminiscent of my childhood. It's very hearty. It's what I call a pantry meal. For the most part, it's called pasta fagioli. No, I did not misspell the caption. There's no Z in it, but that's how it's pronounced in most places, especially where I grew up, pasta fagioli. You've heard it, some people call it pasta fagioli, just to be a little bit more correct to the spelling. But most of us Italian Americans call it pasta fagioli. And so it's basically means pasta and beans. And originally it was thought to be something that Italian sailors used to make a lot. Sustainability has always been a thing for humanity. So they used to have things that they would keep on the boat with them for a long period of time, and dried pasta and dried beans were one of them, and they could make a really hearty stew for a lot of people, all the sailors on the boat. So we're going to start with just chopping up half an onion. I have one saved from a previous dish that I made. This is something that I love. It's like a stretchy cover. You can use this to cover cans. If you only use half a can, or your vegetables, just seals really nicely around it. They come in different sizes, as opposed to using saran wrap, which is single-use plastics, or even foil. Again, it just lowers your food costs because they are reusable. So if you have one of these, great. If not, you could pick one up. I could even post a link to the Amazon link that I probably bought it from. But there's many, so you could try them out. So we're going to start with just chopping up some onions. So half an onion, and you want to get a fine dice. So this is going to be like what I call a small dish meal, or a small food meal. So I make this a lot for my toddler because she loves pasta and she loves beans. So this is something that she's eaten for a really long time, but we make it kind of uniform, right? You want to use small pasta, small beans for your dish. So you want a nice small dice on your vegetables. So the onions, you're just going to make some nice thin slices. This is one of the easiest way that I know how to slice an onion, is to make those kind of two perforations down the middle, and then down here like this, and then just chop down the whole way. And you see it just really breaks up into these beautiful small pieces. And I get the edge here, and then any little pieces like that are a little bit bigger, it's okay if you have a few that are a little bigger, but you know, you want to save that. And then I use every piece that I can get. So the stuff that I can't get to, I'll save this for my discard bag that I made vegetable broth with. You guys can see that on another video. And I just make really small chops with the rest of these. Watch your fingers, as always, when you're handling your knife. You want to tuck them in as much as you can so you don't get finger stew in there. And then I'm also going to do 2 big cloves of garlic that have a little bit more. I'm just going to break this off. This is my fastest way to peel the garlic. I just smash it a little bit. Some people don't like to do that. They feel like it releases the juices, but to me that's a good thing. Just cut off the little butts here. Again, that'll go in my discard. So this piece is like a thin piece, if you see. And this is a little bit fatter. So what I like to do, because I want to get a nice small chop, is I cut the fat piece in half. And you see it's a little bit more even to the other piece. So I cut it nice and lengthwise here. And since you smashed it, it may be a little bit like wonky. It's okay. It's going to get fine diced anyways. And so then I turn it the other way. And I make my minced this way to begin with. I love garlic. It smells so good. And like I said, this dish is something, to me, is so homey. You know, growing up, we didn't have, you know, a ton of money. We were a family of very modest means. So we ate a lot of these, you know, sustainable kind of what we call peasant dishes. You know, pasta and beans, pasta and peas, rice and beans, you know, just any kind of real pantry dish, you know, that we've always had. But the thing about that is that they can still be really delicious and flavorful. So I have my onions, I have my garlic. That's pretty much the prep. I'm also going to grate a little bit of Parmesan. Now you can buy store-bought Parmesan, that's fine. You know, that's not an issue. I just happen to have some fresh Parmesan here. I'm just going to grate to get to be about 1/4 cup. I keep this in my fridge, and when you get down to it, speaking of reusing, what you can do is get it down. I save the little rinds. It comes to about 1 inch or so, and you can actually use these for stock and soups, and it just adds a little bit of like umami flavor. So we'll get about I guess that's about 1/3 cup, whatever. You can't have enough cheese, right? So most people. Okay, let's put that separate for now. And then we're gonna go and get it together. This is the prep. This is as easy as it gets. So we're gonna come over. I have some water boiling over here on the stove already. I salted the water. So you want to make sure that you add enough salt that it tastes salty. The reason for that is, you know, you're cooking your pasta and you want that flavor to embark in your pasta, because what that means is you can actually put less salt in your dish at the end, and this salt tends to cook out. So you want to flavor your water anytime you're boiling pasta or rice or potatoes. Now for, you know, things like that, you know, yes, you want it to be very salty, but just remember, the more longer it stays in the water, the more salt it's going to absorb. So you want to be mindful of things like that. So in this side here, I'm going to do this in a little crock. You can do it in just any kind of deep saute pan. I'm going to put about 2 or 3 tablespoons of oil in here, heat this up, get this going, and then I'm just going to throw my onions in first. And we're going to sweat those until they're a little bit fragrant. And the reason why I used to put onions and garlic in together, and I learned by watching a variety of cooking channels that if you put the garlic in at the same time as the onions, you actually risk burning the garlic, because the garlic is, first of all, it's typically finer diced than the onions, which it is in this instance as well. But also the onions have more water to lose. So if till they start breaking down and kind of getting that caramelization. So if you put the garlic in at the same time as the onions, they have a lot less water content and they're gonna burn a lot faster. So and it really makes your food bitter if you put the garlic in too soon. So you're going to start these off, and you're going to, what they call, sweat them. That sweating is pulling some of that water out of the vegetables for about 2 to 3 minutes. You let that go. And you want to stir, make sure this pasta, you stir this up a little bit so that they don't stick together. You don't want to put it, I mean, some people talk about putting oil in your water to help with the stickiness. That doesn't really do anything. It's a myth, because if you put oil in the water, it separates. Oil and water don't mix. You know, they need a binder. They need an emulsifier. So if you put oil in the water, it's just going to rise, and mixing it in with the pasta isn't really going to do much to keep it from sticking. It's still going to stick because it's starchy. Pasta is starchy. Starchy is just basically the carbohydrates that are coming out of the pasta when you cook it. So they're starting to sizzle over here a little bit. I turned my heat up just a bit because this is a heavy bottom pot. So the difference between a heavy bottom pot and a not so heavy bottom pot is that it takes longer for it to heat up. But the good thing is that it heats up very evenly, and it keeps the heat as well at the same time. So while that's going, I just want to show you I have some olive oil here. I've got my cannellini beans, which is what the traditional pasta fagioli uses. And I have a little bit of tomato paste here that we're going to add to the onions and garlic once they're sweat. And then my spices are over here. So this is what I like to call mise en place. That's a very cookie term. I don't know how you would, a chef term, I guess. Mise en place just means everything in its place. So which means you've prepped everything ahead of time and gotten ready for your meal, so that way you're not scrambling and trying to do things, you know, here and there. Reason why I also love this dish is that it's very fast. As I see, we're making this as the pasta is cooking. The pasta should take about 8 minutes or so because, again, you want to use a small diced pasta. So today I'm using mini penne, but it is traditionally used or made with ditalini or elbow macaroni even you can make. So we're adding our garlic in now because those onions are starting to sizzle. If you can hear that. Oh, it smells so good already. Just onions and garlic is like enough, you know? And then we're going to add about a tablespoon of tomato paste. I love the squeezed tube tomato paste. You can get it in a can, but you hardly ever, I'm talking rarely, are you going to use a full can of tomato paste at once. And so you wind up saving it and then it goes bad or you waste it or whatever. So I love these tube tomato paste because they are just as cheap, you know, as the cans. And, you know, you don't waste them because this you can just stick in the fridge and then use it whenever you need it. And it lasts for a really long time. So you see this the tomato paste just gave the onions and garlic a really beautiful color. They're just kind of tinting it red here with the tomatoes. And then we're going to add 2 cans of cannellini beans, 15-ounce cans. So if you have a bigger can, like a 32-ounce can, just use 1 can. Or I guess it depends on how many people you're feeding. But this is enough for, like, you know, 4 to 6 servings of this stew. You're going to put all the juice from the beans into the can because all of that rich fiber and starchiness from the beans that have been processed is going to add some really nice thickness to the stew. And then we're also going to add some pasta water in here a little bit once it's done to help thicken it up even a little bit more. So you can see, so now I'm going to add my spices. So you want to do about a teaspoon of salt. Again, I typically use coarse kosher salt. The larger the granule, the more you'll use. So if you're using table salt, you want to use a little bit less, otherwise it'll be too salty. And with your spices, you always want to help enhance the original flavors that you have in your dish. So I'm also going to use a little onion powder, about half a tablespoon or half a teaspoon. And we'll put the recipes in the show notes below when you click. Half a teaspoon of garlic. I'm just eyeballing. I measure. I don't measure a lot. A little sprinkle of pepper. I had some dried basil that I made myself because I had some basil that was going bad. So I picked it, I dried it out on my countertop, and I saved it for times like these. I just used an old spice jar and I labeled it. And that's another way to reuse things that could potentially go bad. And just a little bit of basil here, probably about a tablespoon. And we'll just mix that around. Looking really nice here. I'm just going to give this macaroni a little bit of a stir while this is kind of getting nice and delicious. Make sure it's not sticking to the bottom of the pot. Okay, and I'm using the same spoon. Sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't, but I'm doing it now because everything's going to wind up being mixed together anyways. So, you know, it's basically a one-pot dish. It's just you have to use one pot to boil and another pot to actually put it all together. So, oh, this smells amazing. I'm actually going to taste it now here at this point before I add the cheese in, because you want to make sure, because cheese adds a level of salt as well, and you want to make sure that it's not too salty. So it also helps me see if the onions are starting to get really cooked through. So good. Ugh. It just transports me back to my childhood, seriously. Something we used to eat so much. You know, and it was not just like at home, like other people that I knew growing up made this in their homes too. So it was just, it was, you know, I mean, I grew up in a predominantly Italian neighborhood, you know, in Brooklyn, New York for a while. So this was a staple in many households there. So that's pretty much it. And now, because the pasta is so small and it should only take about 8 minutes or so, it should be pretty much done. Yep. Because when you add it to the stew, it's going to cook even more a little bit. So you want to make it just al dente until it, you know, when it's done. Now, I like to spoon out the pasta with a spider, mostly because it's just one right over to the other, but it also brings some of that starchiness of the pasta water into the dish as well. If you don't have a spider, just strain it, you know, in a regular strainer in your sink. But what I would suggest is taking a spoon, like a little, you know, ladle here, and just taking some of that pasta water and just pouring it in, you know, maybe about a half a cup or so of water, and just adding it into the stew, because it's really going to help thrive and bring up that thickness. Now I'm going to take this over and drain the rest of this out. Woo, facial. Always pour anything that has steam on it away from you, because steam can burn worse than a flame. So anything that has steam that could affect you, you want to make sure you're pouring it away from your face, because that's potentially dangerous. I'm just going to add the rest of that here. And I'm going to give that a mix. Oh my gosh, this looks so good. And then now time to add the Parmesan that you grated. Mix that in. And you could always add a little bit more Parmesan or a little bit more cheese, you know, when you're done. Normally, if I'm serving this, I would keep it on a low heat just to make sure everybody gets seconds and it's not cold. I will get this bowl here so you can see how beautiful this is when you plate it. As you can see here, so good. Oh my gosh. Let me get, oh, I threw my spoon away. Oh, so good. This looks so good. Okay. Taste the whole thing. Super hearty, super comforting, this beautiful comfort food pantry dish. You can see doesn't take very much time. This is a great weeknight meal. Super low cost. The cost of this meal is less than $1 per person per serving. So if you did 6 servings, you're looking at $6 max of this entire dish. So I hope you enjoyed this meal. Again, we'll put all the recipe details in the show notes. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and like and subscribe for more. We'll hope to see you soon. Bye, guys.